This week will see the end of the whole astronauts stuck in space saga, which has been wildly misrepresented all over the place, and so I want to break down what actually happened here. In June of 2024, two astronauts, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, took Boeing's Starliner spacecraft to the International Space Station. There was a problem with the spacecraft, specifically the thrusters, so while they were able to safely dock to the ISS, they decided to keep them up there for a bit longer so that they could test things out and try to understand what had gone wrong. Eventually, they came to the decision that the best course of action was to return Starliner to Earth empty, which happened successfully in September of 2024. That same month saw the next batch of astronauts launch to the ISS on a SpaceX capsule. They decided that instead of the 4 astronauts that were supposed to go on that launch, they would only send 2, and Butch and Suni would join that mission as part of the crew and take the 2 empty seats home. And so they did. They've stayed on the ISS, they've done their research, they've completed their mission, and they are now ready to come home on that SpaceX capsule. The next crew arrived at the ISS today, so those 2 Starliner astronauts and the other people on the crew they joined will return to Earth sometime this week. And this is an interesting story. The 2 astronauts sent up on Starliner were only supposed to be there for about a week, and it has now been 9 months, which doesn't seem great. But saying this is a story of astronauts who have been stuck in space for 9 months is just false. Ever since September, they have had a spacecraft, they have had seats on that spacecraft. If there was any emergency or reason for them to come home, they could have. Prior to that, it is more complicated because the safety of Boeing's Starliner wasn't assured, but they did have the spacecraft there, they could have sheltered in it, and when it did come back to Earth empty, it came back completely safely and successfully. And at every stage of this, they weren't alone on the ISS, they had all the food and water and supplies that they needed. Part of what has made this more complicated is some of the things that people like Elon Musk have said, saying that they were left up there for political reasons, which is a lie. And when another astronaut called him out on that, he called that astronaut a slur. It wouldn't have made any sense and would have been very expensive and wasteful to send a whole separate mission up just to collect those 2 astronauts when they could just join the mission that was already going, which they did. And while this is obviously not ideal for those astronauts, they are so experienced and professional. Suni has spent more than 600 days in space, Butch more than 460, and they're coming back home this week. The great thing about this story is that at every step of the process, the safety of the astronauts was prioritized, which is how it should be. It's definitely been an interesting time with this story, but I am ready to let it go.